Alright, here's the moment we've been building for. Arrma Outcast 8S and the KCRC ramp. As you can see, finally got the Outcast put back together. Made a few adjustments to it. I put a handle back here where the roll bar was. Makes it easy to carry around. Also changed a few internal parts, and we'll go over those later. Right now, time to bash. Let me go check it out. Man, that Outcast is so much fun. Man, this thing is wild. Alright, let's see if we can get some air. Alright, it's a little rough, See if we can get it again. Man, that's so much fun. It's amazing how the ramp doesn't hardly move at all. A little more going. Man. Man, this thing just handles like a dream. Might need a little more air to do some flips. Might have to raise it up some. Oh, I lied. Look at that landing. I stuck it. Man, this thing just backflipped on command that time. Yeah, baby. Come on, come on. Whoa! Had to move quick on that one. It was coming my way. Oh, lost a tire. Well, that was a short trip. Alright, so got a few minutes of playtime in there. As you can see, we lost a tire. like it just came unglued a little bit. Looks like it destroyed the tire. Got some glue at the house. We'll be able to re-glue this guy up. Gotta say that was a lot of fun. Short, but definitely a lot of fun. We're gonna have to come back out here after we re-glued that tire. It's gonna take me a little while to re-glue it, so we'll have to come back out another time. It's been 105 in the day, so it's been really tough to come outside until the sun's about to go down. So we didn't have a whole lot of time to play today anyways, but you know, it's unfortunate it got cut short. I'm still a big fan of these Duratrax hatchet tires. I mean, they get some great traction. I did have the factory wheels on there, and you know, I got this off Facebook Marketplace, so the guy had already re-glued them multiple times. They look like they got them blown out, so I went ahead and picked up these Duratrax, and you know, they're still great. So we'll go out there, we'll re-glue them, and we'll regroup and come back. Welcome back, everyone. We're back at the shop. We have the Outcast on the table here, and the reason our basking session got cut short is because of this tire blowout right here. And looking at the tire, we can see there wasn't a lot of glue to be had in there, just a tiny little bit there and there, a little more further down. So it's not too surprising we had a blowout on this tire. It's a really easy fix. We can just clean the inside up and then re-glue it. So we should be good to go on that. One thing I did note when I was putting this on the table is that the pillow ball retaining nut has come loose on the bottom. And that's a pretty well-known issue. It's metal going into plastic there, so there's not a lot we can do to keep that in. But M2C does make some that will lock in place. So if that happens to you, you can pick those up from M2C. What I'm doing instead is I have the front knuckles from Vitavon. So this is gonna be a metal on metal. And what I'm gonna use is thread locker to keep that in place. So I have this orange thread locker, which is the middle ground between the blue and the red. So it should be a nice compromise there because the red's kind of hard to remove. So getting into the build, the first thing I noticed is that it's pretty dusty. It has been above 100 here and we haven't seen rain for a while, so it's not too surprising it was dusty out there. I did take it a little easy because it was kicking up a lot of dust, but the inside being so dusty is something new, and we'll go over that in just a second. One of the things I've already replaced is this Vitavon bulkhead and the diff casing up front. And the reason for that is I had the Arrma 8S diff casing, and looking at the factory one, you can see these columns stick up and go into the diff gear and engage it. Here is the Arrma 8S aluminum version, and as you can see, those columns do not exist. I'm not sure if you can tell, but I have broken off all these screws on the inside there. And that's because they use these 4 3.5mm screws to hold all the torque that goes to the wheels. So this diff gear doesn't have anything to engage right there. One thing I note on those is that the 3.5mm screws are pretty hard to come by. You can't just go to your local hardware store and pick them up, and I tried to find grade 5 titanium 3.5mm screws and had no luck. So there's no way I could upgrade that component, and it's going to be kind of hard to get those screws out without damaging it. So I went ahead and upgraded to the Vitavon model. Not sure if you can tell here, but they do have those columns that will engage with that gear along with the screw. So this is going to be a much beefier component, and as I said, I've already replaced it up front. And one thing that surprised me when I replaced this is I've replaced quite a few bulkheads and diff housings, and I've always had to shim them. This required no shims whatsoever. In fact, I couldn't fit any shims that had such a good fit. So that was pretty surprising. So thumbs up to Vitavon for creating some great parts here. So moving a little further back, I have the Vitavon steering bell crank already installed, and that combined with the front knuckles should provide better steering radius, at least according to Vitavon. And looking at the front knuckles, I can kind of see where we're going to get it from. Right here, the cutout looks a little wider than on the factory plastic component. And that's probably because the metal doesn't need as much on the sides to make it strong. So I have an angle finder, and we're going to measure the angle of the tire before and after replacing that component and see what kind of upgrade we get from that. So I'm pretty excited about that. One thing of note, when I did replace that, I have an 800 kV motor, so it sticks a little far back. So when I put that component in, it actually hit the motor as I was trying to turn. So I had to pull it back out, grind off a little bit, as you can see in this picture above. I didn't need to grind off a whole lot, but once I ground it off, I did take some 800 grit sandpaper, kind of smooth it off a little bit, make sure there's no rough edges and it looked a little better. You might want to do the same. And the component I replaced that I think caused the dustiness was actually this hot racing steering top plate. And the reason for that is I had the rock guards installed previously, and when installing the hot racing, it doesn't have anywhere to install these, so I had to remove them. And there's pretty low cut up here at front, so it allowed a lot of dust to come through. So what I have is I have the Vitavon part, and as you can see, it has a cutout for that right there. So it installs like so, and then the rock guards fit on there, and it fits down in there. So to keep a lot of that dust from coming in, so that's going to be a part we're going to be changing out very soon, because I want to keep the internals nice and clean, because when they're dusty, they're more likely to fail. And it also requires more maintenance to keep the bearings and everything else clean. So I want to keep that as clean as possible, so we're going to be swapping that component out. One thing I did swap out was this chassis brace from Stupid RC. I'm pretty impressed with this brace. It actually didn't add a lot of weight over the factory parts, but it's very, very strong. And looking at the factory parts here, you can see I've already gone through, and I didn't purchase all of them yet, but I do have the M2C rod ends that go on the the factory rods. But looking at these rods, they're hollow. So what I've seen in the forums, a lot of people have bent these rods, and most specifically this rod right here. When that happens, you usually bend your chassis and you bend the rod. And so in order to fix that, you have to take these components out, and potentially everything out if you do bend the chassis. But if you just bend this rod, you have to take all these components out to pull that pin out. So that's kind of a pain in the butt, and I already swapped it out once. I didn't have to do that again. So I went ahead and did away with this and went with the Stupid RC aluminum brace. And as you can see here, the factory one is actually two separate pieces here. They hook up like so. This one actually has a connector piece here. It makes it one solid piece, and it again connects right here. Same thing in the rear. It has this connecting piece here, and then it also connects right there. So this is a very strong component, and for not adding a lot of weight, I'm kind of impressed, because a lot of people swap out their chassis, and it adds quite a bit of weight. Now, it's not such a huge ordeal because it's a very low center of gravity weight, but it's already a pretty heavy rig, and I wanted to keep the weight down as much as possible. I'm already swapping out some aluminum components, which is going to add some weight there. We'll also do those comparisons whenever we're swapping them out. So I wanted to keep it down as much as possible, so this was the best buy that I could find. And when you compare the prices to just doing the rod ends from M2C, it actually comes out the same as buying the bare aluminum version of this. They do offer a red version for a few dollars more if you're wanting to spring to keep the red look in there. Another component I did purchase that I'm very happy with is this wheelie bar with a handle. This is a $20 version off of eBay. One thing of note here is that the wheels that came with it were pretty ugly. They were skateboard wheels, and what they had done is they'd used this bushing on an M5 screw to allow for skateboard bearings to be placed on there. I couldn't find any skateboard wheels that I thought looked good. You know, this has tread on it, and I thought that looked nice. And then you can see here the slots kind of match the Hatchet X tires, and so I thought they looked really good together, and I wanted to keep them. So what I did is I swapped out the bearings on the factory wheelie bar wheels for a 5x16x5. These are actually Berserker bearings, and they came out to about $4 each whenever you purchase them with shipping off of eBay. And I'll leave a link for those in the description as well. I'll also leave a link for the description in this wheelie bar handle. The bearings that came on this handle were ABEX 7, but it looked like someone had scratched it on there with a chisel. The bearings barely moved at all. The 7 didn't look like a real 7. So I went ahead and took those off. I put ABEX 9s on there. This is the first set of ABEX 9s I've ever had, so I'm excited to see how long they last. They're nice and orange. I kind of like the color. But outside of that, you can see we have a lot of components to install on the Outcast, and we'll be doing another video with that, with all these components and all the measurements. Another thing we're going to be doing is that we have the KO Propo USB adapter. So I have an older KO unit. This is the EX2 model. So once you do upgrade the firmware, you can actually upgrade this steering module to the new one. It actually has more sensors to make the steering more responsive. Also with the firmware upgrade, they did upgrade the throttle response, so it should be more responsive. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't suspect that I'll be swapping out the steering components anytime soon. This older model, I saw people win championships with it, so I think it's good enough for what we're doing here. But that is an option if you do want to do it. What I've already replaced up front is the HD hinge pins. Now this is an optional part for even the EXB model. And so one thing I was surprised about is whenever I weighed these against the ones that came from the factory is they were 0.2 grams lighter. And so the description from Arrma says that this is made from a heavier duty metal, and so I was surprised that it was actually 0.2 grams lighter than the ones that were already in there. So we're going to be testing those out. Hopefully I don't bend them, but we will keep you updated on that. A few other components here. We have some axles to replace. I bent or broke the pin on the other one, and then we do have the adjustable hinge holders. Now this is going to go on the limit list there, and this allows us to adjust down to 0 degrees in the rear. So that would be good for speed runs and other things like that. So all in all, I had a lot of fun running this model, and you know, I've been running 1A scale 6S for about 10 years now, and they're a lot of fun. There's a bunch of models for them. The nice thing about it is, especially if you stick with one brand like the Arrma, a lot of the components swap between each other. But stepping up to the 1/5 scale 8S, it's honestly more fun. I wasn't expecting it to be this much fun. It drives like a monster truck. You know, it did a flip almost on, you know, command. I wasn't even expecting it to do it. I thought I was gonna have to raise the ramp up a little bit because the KCRC ramp was only about halfway up. And so I was expecting to have to raise it up a little more to be able to get a nice flip out of it without going full speed, because it was just so dusty. I really couldn't go full speed in that area without kicking up a lot of dust. But surprisingly, it pulled it off. You know, I even landed it twice, so very impressed. Especially with the KCRC ramp, it's all plastic except for metal hardware, and so to handle the weight of this 8S rig is very impressive. So if you're on the fence about the KCRC ramp, I have no issues recommending that. It was quite a lot of fun. It's very maneuverable. It weighs, you know, very, very little. I was able to move it out to the field and back in my truck without any issues at all, versus a wooden ramp is just so hard to move that you almost don't move it. It just kind of stays where it's at. So I highly recommend that, and I also highly recommend this 1/5 scale. If you are on the fence about a 1/5 scale, I recommend that you try it. And the roller model that I have here, it is a great start, but the V2 of the RTR model of the Outcast just came out, and it's the EXB. And so it's a nice upgrade from the V1, because the V1 had smaller shocks, smaller turnbuckles. It just simply wasn't up to the EXB standard. But you step up to the RTR EXB, and it has almost the same components. It has the same turnbuckles, the same shocks. It has a nice 160 amp ESC, has a very powerful motor, and so it's just all in all a great rig. If you're getting started, that's the one to go for. A lot of people ask about the Creighton versus the Outcast. It kind of depends on your style, I think. You know, the Creighton's very good for ground. You know, it stays planted very well. It doesn't pop wheelies like the Outcast does. And I already have the XL WB chassis with the Fire Team, and it's great for driving on the ground. It handles really well. But when I was taking it on the KC ramp, I had a hard time getting it to do flips. I had to hit it almost full speed to get it to do a flip. Versus this Outcast, I mean, I just had so much fun popping wheelies and doing the flip with almost no effort whatsoever. So if you're on the fence, I would recommend personally the Outcast if you're trying to have fun. If you're trying to get faster track times or something like that, then obviously the Creighton's going to be your answer. But I highly recommend that you step up to the 1/5 scale. Thank you for tuning in for this. I really hope you had as much fun as I did, and bash on.